Hi everyone, welcome to Ethernal Realms and welcome to the month ahead astrology reading. Make sure you check your sun, moon, and rising signs for a comprehensive view of the month. Additionally, I would recommend watching the tarot reading of the month ahead to get a different perspective. While you will know the astrology in advance through this session, I will also send you a reminder when the astrological events are near. All you have to do is subscribe, hit the bell, and you will be notified as the events occur through my community page. I occasionally post behind the scenes, meditation guidance, quizzes, and polls, which you can check out for yourself. And it goes without saying that you will be notified when new videos are out, such as other zodiac readings and pick a card tarot readings as well. If you prefer to cut down the guesswork about your month ahead, you can always connect with me via Etsy to get a personalized week-by-week month ahead tarot reading paired with the general astrology. Enough about me, let's talk about you. So let's talk the overview of September. Okay, I'm going to divide this into separate storylines. There are a couple of things happening in parallel, and at some points in time, different things are being activated. So just the general themes going on here. Let's talk about the first one. Is that in the month of September, there are going to be lots of changes on the personal level. And that's because we have Mercury and Venus changing direction. Both of them are going to go direct. And whenever that happens, on especially the personal planets of, the Venus, Mercury, even Mars, we experience lots of shifts in our own mindset and how we go about life. Okay, so on a personal level, lots of changes. But apart from that, we also have Jupiter going retrograde on the same day that Venus goes direct. And that's interesting because it's sort of like both of them are moving in parallel, but they're moving in opposite directions. So they kind of see each other, but they can't really meet at this point. So when Jupiter was active, Venus was not, and now Venus is active, so Jupiter is not. And that's going to be an interesting dynamic to see. But apart from that, we also have Saturn in retrograde, Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto in retrograde. So everything is retrograde for like the first few days of the month, and then slowly one by one things start going direct. That is Mercury and Venus. So whenever the bigger planets are retrograde, they're retrograde for a longer time compared to Mercury, let's say. So whatever changes occur on that level, we are more susceptible to absorbing because we don't quite understand it, or it's not yet conscious and it's kind of happening in the background, or this is like involuntary changes that we were not initiating but is introduced through the universe. Okay, so it's sort of a time where the universe is speaking louder than we are able to speak. Okay, so there will be less resistance as a result of this. That's the plus side. We are able to accept the guidance and the intuitive nudges much more easily. And because Mercury, Venus are direct, we are able to kind of incorporate that in a personal level. For example, if you feel like your belief system is not doing you any favors, or that the structures you have in your life are not working in your favor, then there is this opportunity to shift those things. But that initial feeling is going to be the universe speaking. That's the trigger that comes from your soul, from your subconscious, whatever. So yes, there will be changes in beliefs, priorities, and mindsets with Jupiter, Venus, and Mercury changing directions. The next story that's happening is that our focus this month is shifting when the sun is moving from Virgo season into Libra season. So when the sun is in Virgo, there's also a lot of earth activities, earth trines, conjunctions, movements, and so on, right? So there's a lot of earthly matters which are going to happen, and it's going to be a dynamic phase because, again, Mercury is in an earth sign in Virgo, and it changes direction, which changes, again, the flow of things. When the sun moves into Libra, we're going to talk more about relationships and communication, what commitment means or partnership means, and how to find equality and balance and all of that. And this is going to be a more rejuvenating phase because Venus is out of shadow by the time, or at least, it is really, really getting out of shadow almost. So it's going to be, whenever a planet comes out of retrograde phase, basically it is essentially rested and rejuvenated. So it's kind of gaining power through the post-shadow phase, and then it's going to fully glow in its eminence, basically, right? So in Libra season, Venus, the ruler of Libra, is going to come into full strength. So this is going to be rewarding, rejuvenating, not only for relationships, but also financial matters. Another theme to talk about is that there are 6 trines this month. All of them are Earth, which is awesome, which means we have physical blessings, material blessings. And we have 1 conjunction, also Earth, which means there is some emphasis days, which we'll talk about when we get into it. We do have 2 squares, and both of them have Venus involved in it. Okay, so the first one is going to be a direct Venus squaring with Jupiter, who's retrograde. And this is going to be an interesting one because, like I mentioned, going parallel but in opposite direction. And there can be this ideology that we adopt around this time that maybe we and our goals are not able to meet, or our value system, our belief system, they are not able to meet. Okay, so if we move with that assumption, it's not going to do us any favors. It can just seem like we're doing a lot of things but we're going nowhere. That's what it can seem like. But that does not have to be that way. Okay, now keep in mind, Venus in this square is going to be in shadow phase, and that is again indicating that Venus is not yet in full power, so it can't really help Jupiter with much, or it can't really do anything. It can't share the experience as such. It's just going about in its own lane. And Jupiter is in retrograde, so it's kind of in that asleep state, so it's not able to exert itself fully around this time either. So with that, if you mix in the square, the illusion or the assumption that we don't have power, or that we still have a lot of other things to be taken care of before we start moving towards our goals, that can be quite strong. But the plus side is, if we remove that assumption, that initial thing, and just go with things with an open mind, an open heart, and just give it a shot, it's not going to be this way. It is actually quite blissful. It can help you recognize what you're really looking for in life and all of that. We'll get into the actual effects more as I talk about your zodiac. Next, the other square is also with Venus direct, but this square, she's out of shadow. Okay, she's going to square with Uranus. And what's interesting is Uranus is going to be retrograde, right? So all this month of August and even July, Venus was squaring with Uranus. In the first phase, she was going into shadow, so she was losing strength. So Uranus was kind of winning this square, let's say. In the second month, in August, Venus was fully in retrograde, so she was not in the mood to contest with Uranus's whims and fancies. Okay, so again, Uranus wins that. This would be the first time where Venus is stronger and Uranus is kind of like, okay, well, I've made whatever I needed to make as a change, and what do you have to say? And what's even more interesting is that Venus also rules Taurus, where Uranus is sitting. So she can really dictate how we're going to take advantage of the changes that have already happened, the breakthroughs we have made, the realizations that have occurred in the months of July and September. Venus is now going to put that into context, put a more pleasant spin to it. Like, it doesn't have to be so drastic. We can, take it one step at a time and make the best of it. So all in all, it seems a little optimistic. And we also have an opposition. That's the only opposition. So one opposition, one conjunction. In opposition, we have Virgo again being involved, but here we're going to learn to balance the emotion side of it. So it's nice that we don't have a completely practical and logical month, which generally happens when we have so much Virgo and Libra presence, but we also have a little bit of emotion mixed in there, so we're able to kind of come back to center. Okay, fourth storyline, let's talk about the moon phases. We have a new moon in Virgo along with Mercury going direct. That's going to be on the 15th. And we also have a full moon in Libra on the 29th. And this is going to be the date that Venus squares with Uranus. So both days we have some important events occurring. So these lunar phases are not going to be boring, to say the least. We'll talk about it a lot more when we get into your zodiac. But in essence, new moons talk about new potentials and new beginnings. Meanwhile, full moons talk about completion of a cycle or pivoting into a new direction. Quite fateful. There can be external help and triggers that kind of show us and point where we should be headed next, basically. Now, the fifth storyline is that eclipse is coming about very soon. So September is sort of a drum roll phase. And at first, we might not feel it too much because we're kind of busy with the whole slumber of all the planets being retro. Then on the 4th, Venus goes direct and so on and so forth. So slowly we start waking up and getting into the mode of realizing the fateful changes that the eclipses are going to bring. Because those fated changes, they are, again, universally directed. And because so many of these outer planets are retrograde, we are, like I mentioned, we don't have that much resistance. We're more accepting of what's coming in. So this is going to be an interesting eclipse season in October, and we're starting to see what it could be about. Okay? All right, let's start with your specific reading. So Cancerians, let's talk about the planets changing directions as the first theme, because these are some big stuff that's happening this month. On the 4th, we have Jupiter in Taurus going retrograde and Venus in Leo goes direct. Both of them are benefic planets. Both of them are in fixed signs, and they're kind of changing directions in the opposite way, right? So as soon as we understand what our desires are and how we can realize those things, create more passion, perhaps improve your financial status in your case, because Leo falls in that second house. Also, how can you improve your self-worth and how can you exert that self-worth more definitively in your personal life? As soon as you realize that, you also get this bigger perspective of what holds you back as a belief system, because Jupiter rules beliefs, and also it can rule what you think about abundance and stability, finances, what is your sense of security and all of that. So when it is going retrograde in your 11th house of social circle, acquaintances, your large scale network, humanitarianism, also your hopes, dreams and aspirations, it can be about, yes, I know how to make money for now, for example, right? Yes, I know how to make money for now. That makes me feel very good and fulfilled. But does it take me towards the bigger goals I have in life? That can be the question. So you fix the local stuff which has been kind of haywire a little bit or needs some fixing in the months of July and August. And in September, you fully realize, okay, this is what needs to be done and all of that with Venus going direct. But then Jupiter essentially is like, let's evaluate what beliefs for the long run has been holding us back. You might think that you need a certain sum of money, for example, to realize a certain goal, but with Jupiter retrograde, that belief can be challenged. Perhaps you don't need that much. Perhaps you only need like half the sum that you were thinking about, or you don't need a particular person or resource to make something happen. Instead, you might need something altogether different. So we're going to explore these topics 4th onwards. Okay, now another planet changing direction, very important, it's a personal planet, and that is Mercury in the sign of Virgo, going direct on the 15th of the month. So the first half of this month is still going to be Mercury retrograde, a little bit of blurriness, and maybe we're not yet fully realize our goals, and we're not able to develop a plan or a strategy that is clear enough for externalizing things, but we'll definitely have a building sense of clarity at especially like 6th onwards, 4th onwards, where we know what to do, but we're still figuring out the details. 15th onwards, though, it's more likely that we can implement certain changes or certain mindsets in your case, because Virgo falls in that 3rd house of communication, mindset, mentality, your social circle in a local level, such as your neighbors and colleagues, and also short distance travel. So if you have some travel plans that you've made during Mercury was retrograde, it is likely that those things will change. So I hope that you've booked like refundable tickets or you're flexible enough, because that's something that I always advise whenever Mercury goes retro. But either way, there can be some solution as well that comes up here, or some conversation, information you had previously missed that can come about here, so that things can set on a regular trajectory beyond this point. Alternatively, it can also be about decluttering your space, because the third house talks about your environment. It can be like your office space, and there's just been lots of paperwork and documents kind of piling up, or stationery just lying around, or random cables and wires and all of that just makes you feel a little bit more cluttered than it needs to be. During retrograde, it's an optimum time to declutter these things, and once Mercury goes direct in this house, you feel refreshed in the mind, you're ready to plan, strategize, take action on the goals and the epiphanies, and just these bubbling desires and ideas that have been happening during this retro phase. And anything that has been difficult to sort out, that is also going to find more clarity around the 15th. Now let's talk about the aspects. So two houses are in common with many aspects over here, and that would be the Virgo part of your chart, that is your third house of communication, siblings, and short distance travel, like I mentioned before, and also Taurus, which is your 11th house of hopes, dreams, aspirations, friendship circle, acquaintances, humanitarianism. So let's first talk about the Mercury trining with Jupiter aspect. Okay, there are two of these. One is happening on the 4th. Mercury is in Virgo, Jupiter is in Taurus. Jupiter is retrograde for both of these instances. The second one is happening on the 25th. So one near the beginning of the month and the second one near the end of the month. Both of them are in the same zodiac, and Jupiter is retrograde in both of them, but Mercury is retrograde in the first one but is direct in the second one. And also the zodiac season shifts. In the first one we have the sun being in Virgo, and in the second one we have the sun being in Libra. So the focus in general moves and shifts when the sun moves from one zodiac to the other. For you, the focus can move from your immediate environment into your home and family sphere. You want to cultivate more important relationships, have some good conversations and connections with your family members, for example, or beautify your home in some way towards the end of the month. So in the first part, you're still focused on the documentation process. Perhaps you have some forms to fill, something to account for, some responsibility you're taking, and you still are figuring out the ropes. So you can't yet focus on the home and family sphere or what brings you comfort and security and all of that. Instead, you first have to do kind of the groundwork to make those things happen. So in that first trine on the 4th, when we have that Mercury retro trining with Jupiter retro, this can talk about some beneficial information coming to you through your friends, existing friends, or it can be about some information you have filled out in the past and you've not heard anything about. That can come around here and bring you some extra benefits. If you have your own business, the 11th house talks about the gains and the benefits from the business, and this can be quite beneficial based on the work you've done before. Any socializing, word of mouth, indirect communication, and advertising procedures that you have encountered, that is going to lead to some nice benefits here. Okay. In general, there can be a rethinking of what your goals are, and what you realize is that you can make it happen right now, and you can do something in the near future. Something you thought would be in an indefinite time period is probably going to be sooner than you realize. That is exciting, but at the same time, because it's an earth trine, you're likely to feel more like, yes, it's possible, but I still have to work for it. Okay. Earth trines are very practical, they're grounded, they're measured, and they prefer to be organized and stable as well. So whatever realizations and benefits that you're acquiring at this time, they're likely to help you in your physical life, in a physical sense. They can come about here as well. Okay, let's talk about the second Mercury trine Jupiter, because Mercury is now direct, right? So these information that are first brimming around the 4th, that is going to become more conscious or applicable, practicable around the 25th. So you can actually just implement the changes or implement the information, and you can see for yourself what that means for you. Okay. For example, in the first instance, you might hear that your friend is suggesting you should advertise your posts, okay, in order to, get more viewers or something. And you're like, okay, that's a good idea. Let me research on this. Let me figure out if that is viable for me. Do I have the finances? How much finances? What is the best option and all of that? 15th onwards, you are still doing the research. Perhaps you're trying some things out. On the 25th, you're likely to see some results that are going to be positive, but it also makes you think about, nice, this is great, it worked out, I'm very happy, but is this something I really want for my future? You might start thinking on a bigger level, whether or not that's something that fits with you. But whatever you decide beyond this point, it's not a stressful aspect. You're likely going to be happy. Like, I know I can do this, that's awesome, gives me more, self-esteem, and I can just go for my other goals, which are calling out to me even more deeply. It's sort of like that. Now, another trine that Mercury is making also towards the end of the month in Libra season, Mercury trines with Uranus. Uranus is also retrograde in the sign of Taurus in your 11th house. So both of them are planets of the mind. Uranus relates with the higher mind. Mercury relates with the conscious efforts of our daily communication, for example, the paperwork, documentation, emailing, SMS, all of these things, yeah? So this talks about bringing and internalizing the changes that Uranus has introduced in the months of July, August, even before, while Uranus was direct, and kind of using that in our everyday basis. Like, what does that mean? If we have these brilliant ideas, innovative solutions, and perhaps there have been breakthroughs as well, new unexpected communities you've connected with, or unexpected encounters within your friend circle and whatnot. So what can you do about that? Unexpected or seemingly random, bursts of, engagement, let's say, in your social life. Yes? What do you make of it? How do you make sense of that so that you can utilize that more consciously in your future endeavors? So on the 30th, you're more likely to absorb this information and really put yourself in a track to making some more measured and conscious steps moving ahead. Okay, now let's move on to these sun trines. We have sun trining with Jupiter and sun trining with Uranus. Jupiter one is happening on the 8th and the Uranus one is happening on the 16th. Both Jupiter and Uranus are retrograde, and this basically indicates that you have some clarity coming in. Wherever the sun is, we have clarity, and especially at a beneficial angle, you might receive some nice information. Again, you can hear it from your friends, but it can also be some information you'll hear in your colleague circle, from your teamwork and any collaborative or cooperative efforts. And that can inspire you to make certain changes in your social circle. Perhaps you're being introduced to a new community. I sometimes get this feeling of new old whenever these planets are retrograde. So it's something you could have encountered in the past, but you didn't think too much of it. You thought, oh, okay, well, that's nice, but I have this other thing going on. But then whenever these planets go retrograde, you might just remember, oh yeah, like I did talk to that person, and I remember they were in design, or they are very savvy with their finances. Maybe I can, get some tips from them, and so on. So it's just like timing, right? We kind of happen to forget, and then we happen to remember. Coincidence or not. So around this time, definitely there can be some nice breakthroughs regarding these circumstances. This can also indicate that you hear some good news from your friendship circle, or like boosts of motivation. It can be that your friends' lives are going through an upgrade as well, and you feel really happy for them. This can also be joining forces with like-minded people and people with similar belief systems. We have another Earth trine. This one is engaging different houses. Virgo still stays the same. That's your 3rd house. And we also have Pluto in Capricorn in your 7th house of love, relationships, and partnerships in general. So that collaborative, cooperative effort takes on a more emphasized role here. Generally, any one-to-one connections that you are engaged in on a regular basis, that falls in your 7th house. So when we have this trine between the 3rd and the 7th, it again indicates that you have a nice conversation with a partner of yours. Perhaps you have been going around in circles having the same argument, and you just cannot figure out what is up, what is the thing that's blocking your connection. This can be a time when you get some ideas, or you just have this realization that perhaps we are arguing wrong, or like we need to communicate better, or we need to, maybe change our surroundings, give us some space or something like that. For in either case, you're just finding a lot more harmony and connection with your partnership section. It can even be that you collaborate with someone one-to-one. They could have been someone in your vicinity, in your social circle, but you never interacted with them previously, but they always had that potential, and this would be a time where you just bring that into fruition, basically. What else? This also has a vice versa type of situation. So any, like I said, ongoing disturbances within any connection, be it one-to-one friendships or business partnership, misunderstandings can be resolved through some personal transformation. It can also be that your partner or these other one-to-one people, they are going through a transformative phase themselves, and they are much better able to voice what they have been going through a lot more clearly, because they themselves are kind of understanding themselves in a different light. So it can be an overall pleasant conversation. One other thing to keep in mind is a conjunction. We have a conjunction between the Sun and Mercury. Mercury is retrograde in this time. This is in Virgo, in that third house of communication of yours, and that is going to be on the 6th. So whenever Mercury is retro and the Sun meets it, it's about rejuvenation and clarity. Instead of shooting in the dark, hit and miss, and all of that generally we do during Mercury retro, on the 6th when the Sun meets, it's like, okay, so this definitely does not work, and I cannot keep doing this, and this definitely works, so I'm going to keep trying and researching on this. Maybe I figure something out, maybe there's a better way to do this, but at least something is clear. Okay, there's a guiding light almost whenever both of these planets meet, and a conjunction is always like an emphasis point. It's an exclamation mark, let's say. It's like, yep, this or not this. You figure something out here. How you talk to yourself, there could be some changes you're making here. With Mercury in this house, it's pretty strong because it rules Virgo. So any negative self-talk or negative mindsets and all of that, it could work very much on why you feel that way or why you think that way, and what could be done to not repeat those things so that you can improve your quality of life and mind in general. Now let's move on to the Venus squares. There are two instances that Venus is squaring. Once is with Jupiter, who's retrograde, and the second time is Uranus, who is also retrograde. Jupiter and Uranus are in Taurus, like I mentioned already. So Venus squaring with Jupiter, that's on the 17th. It is still Virgo season. Virgo is not really a helpful zodiac, or not a helpful zodiac. It's a pretty neutral situation with Venus or Leo, but it is in a harmonious aspect with Jupiter, who's retro, right? So the focus at this time of the month is going to help the self-examination or the revisiting of certain belief systems, conditioning, and philosophical point of view and all of that, okay? So Venus at this time is still in shadow phase. She's out of retro, that's nice, but she's still in shadow phase, which means she's not fully empowered yet. Now, we have to be very mindful of this one. There is a tendency to not take advantage of this aspect, because with squares, at least when Jupiter is not feeling so great, Venus is not feeling so great, it can feel like we are assuming a lot of things that may not be true. It feels as though what we desire may not be possible to achieve because our dreams are far too grand, especially in your case because it's in that 11th house, right? Taurus in that 11th house. So our goals are too lofty. What will people say? I don't know. I think all of these things. I want all of these things, but maybe my finances are not stable enough. Maybe I'm not good enough. All of these thoughts can come up. And these are all assumptions that we make about ourselves based on the projections and conditioning of the outside world. So if we are able to keep an open mind, mindfully on this particular day, a little bit before after, we can see beyond this veil, because this is still a benefic square. Both of these planets are benefic, direct or retro, whatever. So they can absolutely show us that how we imagined that something can be fulfilled may not be the way, yes, but there is a better way if we are willing to see. Yes. So if we succumb to the thoughts of I don't have enough or I'm not enough to make that happen, forget about it, I'm just going to sit here and sulk, then, well, it's not going to happen. That's what, because these planets are not able to reach out and help us so directly, we need to be open to their help and kind of tune in as well. It is a weekend, so try to manage some time here if you can. Of course, everyone's life is different. Do as best as you can, of course, but just saying that there is an opportunity underneath the illusion, but it can be a little bit easy to give in to the illusion at this time. Okay, so don't assume things about yourself. Just go with an open mind. You're a lot more capable than you think you are. And this is all about how much power can you take into your own hands, how much accountability can you take, and all of that. Okay, now the second one, when Venus squares Uranus, the zodiac season shifts to Libra. Venus rules Libra, and Libra and Leo are in harmonious aspects with each other. So there is some opportunities that surround you in general. When it is Libra season, it's going to be a lot more pleasant. Venus is out of shadow phase during this square on the 29th. And what's interesting is that Uranus and Venus have been squaring a lot throughout July and August. A little bit looser in August, but they've still kind of been around doing this dance. And the purpose of Uranus has been to shake Venus out of her comfort zone. That this is not the only way, or this is not the only measure of beauty. Let's challenge this quality of, this is creativity, this is how I express myself, this is what I find beautiful, this is my style, and this is how I earn my finances. Let's challenge those, ways of going about things. Maybe there's something else that we're not seeing here. And because Venus in those square situations, she was not feeling her best self. First she was in shadow, then she was in retrograde, and then again she was in shadow. So she was like kind of just being tugged along by Uranus dictating whatever it wants to dictate or bring about whatever changes it wanted to. And this would be the first time where she's feeling fully empowered to deal with, or rather absorb, all the changes that have occurred already. Okay, she wants to make meaningful change herself. She's not waiting for things to happen. Before that, she was like, yeah, maybe I'm not ready. Okay, maybe I need to acquire more finances, or I need to believe more in myself before I can do all of these things. She sees Uranus, but she's not able to do anything about that. On the 29th, she's pretty fierce. She's pretty bold, especially in that sign of Leo. It's very fierce here, quite creative. She's like, well, if this doesn't work, I'll figure out a way. Okay, so you're likely to feel that, burst of desire, inspiration, and boldness to go for what you want and create whatever you want for yourself. Now, Leo rules children as well, so it could be like your children wanting to acquire more finances, or if they're not in the position to earn themselves, it's about you trying to figure out how you can pamper your children more, or how you can pamper your inner child more as well. And kind of that ups your self-worth. It shows you that yes, you can do it. So it really boosts your self-esteem in general. By the way, the time that the sun moves from Virgo to Libra season, that's going to be on the 23rd, and that's the autumnal equinox. So beyond this point, the general vibe of the collective is going to be about surrendering. It's the wisdom phase, astrologically speaking. It's also about letting go of things, not resisting too much, trying to find harmony and balance, and just the wisdom in the things as they are. And another thing to keep in mind is that there is eclipse season brewing throughout this month. It's not there yet, okay? It's not there yet, but we have 2 eclipses in the month of October, so they're going to kind of make themselves known a little bit. You'll feel a little bit more fateful, like these opportunities are sort of coming out of nowhere, that type of vibe. Okay, now we do have another opposition. This one is between Virgo and Pisces. I talk a little bit more about this in the overview section. I would recommend you check it out. It's a nice quick view of what's happening this month. But regardless, this again brings into focus the sun in Virgo with Neptune, who's retrograde in the sign of Pisces. So illusions and practicality, any imbalance in this area is going to come up to the surface. If you're dealing with some immigration visa, other foreign documents or cultures, this can be about collaborating with them or kind of reconnecting and understanding where things are. There can be, again, like you feeling as though you need to travel abroad in order to gather a new perspective. It can also be changing your space and going to some place that you've never explored before. That can bring in some inspiration here. On the other hand, you're making some travel plans, so you really have to kind of figure out exactly where you're going, when you're going, and all of that. Quite detail oriented in general around this time. Mercury is direct, so your mind is fully capable to strategize for all of these things. Okay, now let's talk about the moons. We have a new moon on the 15th, and this coincides with Mercury going direct, and that is also in Virgo. The new moon is in Virgo, and it is trining with Uranus in Taurus in that retrograde phase. That would be your third house and your 11th house once more. So new opportunities and ideas are absolutely coming in here on the 15th for you. New mindset shifts, new ways of looking at things, and you might be adding some, mental exercises in your everyday routine. For example, weekly, you're going to declutter a certain space because that helps refresh your mind. Or it can be grounding exercises. Every week you want to walk barefoot, or at home you want to be walking bare feet or something. That's going to bring you closer to earth and just make you feel grounded, secure, safe in general. It can also be you taking up like cooking activities or learning new recipes or writing your own recipes, That's just going to be quite inspiring or fun in general for you. Okay, and we have a full moon in the sign of Aries. It's a fiery full moon, so it's going to be quite exciting. It coincides with the same day that Venus squares with Uranus, that is on the 29th. So the sun is in Libra, the moon is in Aries, and this is going to bring focus into your 4th house and 10th house. These are important axes, okay? The 1st, 7th, 4th, and 10th. These are important stuff. So this can be talking about new developments, or rather ongoing developments that are coming to a close, and that's making space for something new. Or it can be about pivoting direction of some goals and ambitions you've had, and changing the way that you've been operating or working. It can be changing your status too. Okay, so one designation comes to a close and then you kind of are promoted to some other place, or you take charge and you're like, yep, I'm going to do my own business, so bye-bye, I'm going to change tracks now and figure out something that's much more beneficial for me. And like I said, Venus is in Leo and she's at a harmonious angle with this Aries part of the house. Both of them are fire signs, so they kind of work together. So it's going to have a positive influence in your financial sector. So all in all, quite nice. It's a full moon, so you can manifest. Even new moons, you can manifest. Make sure to, manifest for something that's purging, cleansing, pivoting, closing. When it comes to the full moon, and with new moons, you can manifest something that's a new potential or a new idea. So that's what I have for you. Thank you for being here. I really hope you enjoyed and that the messages help you out throughout the month. Stay tuned for the tarot reading as well. I will be uploading them soon. Make sure you subscribe and hit the bell so you're notified whenever that's up. And if you enjoyed the reading, please do like and comment your thoughts if you have any. It will be really lovely to hear back from you, and it really helps the channel grow as well. I will see you some other time. Until then, take care. Bye.